Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned in to the Rebel News live stream on this Thursday, October 15th, 2020. I'm David Menzies, and I'm joined, as per usual, by my lovely co-host, Sheila, the She-Devil Gun Reid. Hey, Sheila, you did great work last night covering that Saskatchewan election. For those who missed the election coverage, how would you condense it into a nutshell?
It feels as though I haven't gotten out of this chair in like 72 hours between live streams with you and then election coverage in Saskatchewan, plus my daily work. So when I'm filming my daily videos, I'm in this spot in front of these computers, in front of that camera. Again, just talking to myself. But the election coverage in Saskatchewan, I mean, the NDP really are the same all over. They say stuff like, oh, those conservatives are racking up debt, but then they also say austerity is bad. And then they talk about cuts as though cuts are bad. Like, don't threaten me with a good time. You're going to cut the public sector? Where do I vote? It was interesting to see, having recently covered the Trump-Biden debate and how that unfolded and how that got a little wild and a little Western. Versus how a Canadian debate unfolds on the prairies. And I think Ezra was right to point out that Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, he really can just idle across the finish line. He doesn't have to do anything. He's going to win, and he's going to win hugely. And so all he has to do is just, keep both hands on the wheel and maintain his speed. And the NDP are going to do whatever they can to try to derail him. And it's just not working. And you saw that unfold in the debate last night. Scott Moe, there were lots of times where he could have called out the NDP leader, Ryan Miley, for, I would suggest, flat out lying, like saying Saskatchewan companies aren't involved in the Regina overpass build. Like over 90 companies from Saskatchewan were involved in that, but he just didn't. You could tell he wanted to. The look on his face was like, I want to light this guy right up, but he didn't. And I think that's kind of the prairie way. And
I think the people of Saskatchewan are smart enough, Sheila, to realize that why am I going to vote for a party that is going to derail our economy even further than it has been, which is what you're going to get with the NDP, right?
Yeah, I mean, Saskatchewan right now, all things considered, in a very slow economy. They do have the hottest economy in the country. They've been handling the COVID meltdown of the economy and of people's liberties better than most. So, people vote for change when they want change. I don't think that there's much in Saskatchewan that you really want to change. Things are going pretty good there. And, as an Albertan, I think very closely culturally tied to Saskatchewan, we were settled by the same people at the same time for the same reasons. And they lived through the NDP for a very long time, because the power center of the NDP in Regina had the most amount of seats. And so, just like everywhere else in the country, just like Confederation, you have a small group of people concentrated in one geographic region controlling everybody else across the country. The same thing happened in Saskatchewan. And finally, they got rid of the NDP. And as an Albertan, having just lived through the catastrophe of the NDP, what is unfolding in Saskatchewan right now with their recovery from the NDP, it's been, a decade long, but it gives me hope that things are possible, that you can get your economy back on track, that you can embrace those things that everybody needs and that everybody knows they need to survive. Like Scott Moe said it last night, it was food, fuel, and fertilizer. That's what they've built their economy around. And those are things that everybody needs to survive everywhere, not just in Canada. And they know it and they embrace it and they're not going back. And so, Godspeed to Saskatchewan. You've been an example for all of us.
Well, certainly when it comes to New Democrats, Sheila, they certainly know all about fertilizer. So to paraphrase the Meatloaf song, 1 out of 3 ain't bad. Actually, it's really bad, but It's a failure rate.
Yeah, it's not good.
But Sheila, great job, of course, as well as Ezra and Kian, of course. And at this point, I believe you explained to viewers who are maybe tuning in for the first time what it is that we're ostensibly hoping to achieve here.
Yeah, 5 minutes into the show and we haven't even told anybody what we're doing. That's sort of the formula of our live streams. This is the daily live stream. It used to be just on Friday, just hosted by Ezra. But during the pandemic, while the mainstream media sort of tightened back on their news coverage, and while CBC canceled local news altogether, you probably didn't notice because you don't watch and you're not alone in that. Nobody else does either. We expanded our news coverage. We have a live stream every weekday now, 10 a.m. in Alberta, noon in Toronto. And we talk about the news of the day. It's great because David and I get to interact with each other. We're not just colleagues. We're good friends and, we like to banter and we like a lot of the same things, old cars and old wrestling. It gives our viewers a chance to interact with each other. And there's quite a community that's formed in the daily live stream, live chat. It's a lot of the same people there every day and they're telling their friends and their friends are coming and, everybody's talking back and forth and it's great. But it also gives our viewers a chance to do something to support the work that we do here at Rebel News and to give us your feedback because they don't allow feedback on the mainstream media. They close the comments. And I know some of you have pointed out, to comment on our website, you do need to have a Facebook account. But you know what? You don't need that for YouTube. You can leave a comment in the YouTubes and you don't need anything. Just leave a comment. But you can do something called a super chat. And that involves clicking that little $sign at the bottom of the live chat. You could throw some money in there to support the work that we do, to help us going on our live streams. And you can leave a question, a comment, a topic that you want to put on our radar. Sometimes people give us compliments. I'm not opposed to that, but also sometimes give us insults, which again, I'm not opposed to that. I appreciate constructive criticism and, I'll take the haters as they come. But what that will do, if you put that in a super chat, it'll highlight it, it'll pin it to the top of the chat. So everybody watching now can see it, but everybody watching later can see it too. And we will read your comment, query, or concern on air and do our best to address it.
Yes, and unlike the mainstream media, say CBC, as we've discussed before, Sheila, most of the CBC stories, as far as I can see, they delete, they prohibit comments. It says comments are disabled for this story. So in other words, they'll take your money, folks. They don't want to hear what you have to say, even though you have direct skin in the game. I guess I mixed up disabling comments from deleting comments because that is the big story of the day, isn't it, Sheila? This Biden, can we call it Twittergate yet? Are we at gate level? But regardless, talk about the social media version of the Barbara Streisand effect, eh?
Yeah, I mean, they're censoring. And at first it was just, the one mainstream media company that was talking about Joe Biden and his son and their ties to the Ukraine. But now they're censoring anybody who's sharing that link and anybody who is sharing a screenshot of that news story and now the associated news stories. Those are being censored too. And it's interesting to see that this might actually be the straw that breaks the camel's back with those remaining conservatives who say, but Twitter is a private company and Google is a private company. And aren't we pro free enterprise? And aren't we pro not meddling in free enterprise? This is a different time. This is Standard Oil kind of stuff where they control so much of the flow of information and they're so big that you can't get around them. They are literally telling you what you can think and what you can read at this point. Yeah. Thanks for putting that up, Justin. So Donald Trump Jr. points out that Twitter and Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, are blocking access to a government website. The House Judiciary, headed by the GOP. They're blocking people from tweeting the link to the New York Post story on Hunter Biden. So we put it on our website for you to read and share. And so then Twitter is now blocking the House Judiciary official Twitter account. They locked Trump's press secretary out of her Twitter account.
Unbelievable.
Yesterday. This is election meddling.
Yep.
If the Russians were doing this, there would be absolute hell to pay. But because it's Jack Dorsey, Silicon Valley, we're supposed to be just fine with it and say, no, this is the free market at work. No, this is an oligarchy now, an information oligarchy. And these guys need to be trust busted into next week. I'm tired of conservatives talking about it. You have the power, do something about it.
I totally agree, Sheila. And remember, this isn't Twitter blocking some conspiracy theory from a crank living in his basement. This was a story published in the New York Post originally. And yet Twitter seems that they need to have their fact checkers check out the merits of this story. I wonder who those fact checkers are going to be, Sheila, as the famous phrase in Latin translated into English goes, who watches the watchers? I mean, is it going to be Twitter-approved leftist fact checkers that find some kind of ridiculous reason to continue banning that? And what you said about Standard Oil, 100%, more than a century ago, Standard Oil was so huge that under the Antitrust Act, they were broken up into, I believe, 33 or 34 companies. I think when Donald Trump gets his second term come November 3rd, this is going to be one of the biggest issues moving forward in the next 4 years. Who controls free speech in the cyber public square? And clearly, by the actions of the likes of Twitter and Facebook, I don't like, and millions of people who cherish freedom don't like where it's going. And I'll tell you another thing, Sheila, in the bigger picture, we have to get a definition of what is Twitter, what is Facebook. Are you merely an aggregate, or are you a publisher? Because the comparison is, if I get on the phone to you and we have a private conversation, Ma Bell doesn't interrupt when she doesn't like something I'm saying or something you're saying. And, excuse me, you can't be talking about that issue. Next topic, please. Or are they indeed, because if they were a conveyance, they would take a hands-off approach. I think their actions prove they are a publisher, and it's something they've always denied being because they simply don't want the liability. That if they are deemed a publisher and something goes up that is truly libelous or slanderous or defamatory, they'll be on the hook. But these are the issues moving ahead once, like I said, yeah, I guess I'm being overly optimistic in the eyes of some, but I really think Donald Trump is going to get that second term, and this has to be addressed, Sheila. And as I alluded to earlier, the Barbara Streisand effect, because of their censorious ways, this story has taken off more so, that I think, Sheila, than if Twitter just let the original tweet fly.
Yeah, there's a lot of things happening here. I guess we'll go back to the original story. Published in the New York Post, emails reveal that Hunter Biden introduced a top executive of Burisma, the Ukrainian natural gas firm on whose board he sat, to his dad while Joe was in the White House, and less than a year before Joe Biden pushed the Ukrainian government into firing a prosecutor who was investigating Burisma. And so emails show this. Twitter censors this story. Joe Biden has lied about this. And here's the thing. If there was a real media in the United States, they would be camped out in front of Joe Biden's house.
Oh, yeah.
If this were Donald Trump and one of his kids, you better damn well believe it. They would be scorching the earth with their shoes in front of Trump's house, back and forth, running back and forth, just burning up the concrete to get access to them. But they're not doing any of that. In fact, they let, according to the New York Post, they let Biden call a lid that's shut down any media, any appearances, any campaigning for the day yesterday, the day this broke, at 9:41 in the morning. I know he's old and he likes the early bird specials, but 9:41 is a little bit early. And so reporters then couldn't push him about his past claims that he'd never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings. Now that data from an old hard drive suggests that's not so. What do you mean reporters can't push him? Go find him and push him. He's Joe Biden. How fast do you think he can get away from you? He's 90. Go find him, track him down and ask him these questions. Either he's going to answer, he's going to lose his cool, but it's going to be very revealing. But the fact that the media are letting him just, we're shutting her down at 9:41 in the morning. Give me a break. But I'm, like I said, I'm very tired of Republicans pissing and moaning about internet censorship. You have the power to do something. You should have done it 4 years ago when they won the presidency. It might be too late to save themselves.
Well, you know what, Sheila? What this story has proven is that when it comes to the vast majority of the mainstream media, they're not merely ignoring stories about Joe Biden. They are actually in the business of protecting Joe Biden and promoting Joe Biden in the most positive of ways. But you know what? I think, like you said, this is the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of outrageousness, in terms of them trying to bury this tweet, because it's what everyone's talking about right now. And the internet being the internet, you can find this story. You keep searching, they keep deleting, but it does keep popping up. But it's another outrageous example of a mainstream media that is not doing its job anymore, Sheila. You know, folks, Sheila's 100% right. If this was an honest media, or if this situation was in the Trump side of the ledger, there would be the live eyes camped out on the lawns of the Trump family. This is actually shocking, I think, Sheila, and just how blatant it is.
It's shameless, and it's, to use a word Ezra uses, gaslighting. I mean, you look at Twitter's their excuse for why they did this, why they are blocking this URL. We want to provide much needed clarity around the actions we've taken with respect to 2 New York Post articles that were first tweeted this morning. This is the reason they give. The images contained in the articles include personal and private information like email addresses and phone numbers, which violate our rules. As noted this morning, we also currently view materials included in the articles as violations of our hacked materials policy, and commentary on or discussion about hacked materials, such as articles that cover them but do not include the link to the materials themselves, aren't a violation of this policy. Our policy only covers links or images of hacked materials themselves. And this policy was established in 2018. Blah, 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 blah. I'm older enough to remember that Trump's personal tax records were, fine to be dumped on the internet. Surreptitiously recorded communications between Melania Trump and other people, that's fine. I think that was allowed to trend for 2 days. So if this is indeed their policy, fine and dandy, but it's obviously not. It's selectively applied, and it's amounting to censorship, and the Republicans should have done something about this 4 years ago.
Oh, 100%. By the way, I got sort of sidetracked there. Is that a new graphic by Mr. Producer? The baseball bat and the ball? It looked like that to me. You were... He said he was getting ready for a super chat, which is, I guess, his hint, Sheila, to go to the super chat. But Justin, you can't do all these fancy graphics. I'm like that, sort of a version of unfrozen caveman lawyer from Saturday Night Live when it was funny. I'm unfrozen caveman journalist. Your tall buildings and fast-moving cars frighten and confuse me. So, anyways, Sheila, you get to the super chat.
I'm actually surprised you know how to use your cell phone. And I'm genuinely surprised, because you can teach an old dog new tricks, I guess. the old adage is not true. Let's get to the super chats. Lisa Proust, who sent us a super chat last night, and sent us a few super chats last night on the live stream.
Oh, thank you.
Apologizing for being absent from our live streams, David. But she said that I'm supposed to give you a hug, which is difficult when I'm some 3,000 kilometers away. But next time I see you, you're getting one from me and from Lisa. She gives us $5 and says, Sheila, David, I love you both. Please talk about how imperative it is for Canadians to understand the Charter of Rights and its hierarchy over emergency state. Well, that's the thing. The government is not supposed to make a law that violates the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And in Ontario's case, they don't seem to care about any of that. Actually, I got some good news this morning, just in a media notification from the Alberta government, that they are actually repealing one of the laws that they have been using during the pandemic because they think it's far too onerous. Let me just see if I can dig it up in my email just so I can go through it a little bit.
I hope Premier Ford is paying attention to this, Sheila.
Well, that's, I say all the time, please, good gracious, call your friend Doug Ford, Jason Kenney. Our health minister issued a statement this morning on the repeal of the Public Health Emergency Powers Amendment Act. So the Public Health Act was, introduced in 1907, and then they moved to modernize it after the fact. And it expanded the government's powers to the point of search and seizure, like they could come in your house and take things that they needed to fight the pandemic. They are getting rid of that because in a rare instance of in the Commonwealth world, a government is actually returning freedoms to the people because they thought these pandemic laws that they passed or have been passed in the past have gone too far. And like Stephen Harper, when he not only got rid of the gun registry, but destroyed all the documents because he recognized that he would not always be in power. That's what Jason Kenney's government is doing, getting rid of this law that gives too much power to the government, because while they didn't abuse it, they do know that some authoritarian left-wing government absolutely will. And so they're repealing Bill 10, which is amazing. It's amazing. And Jason Kenney, call your friend Doug Ford.
Good for Premier Kenney. So basically what you're saying, Sheila, is Alberta is going the opposite direction of, say, Australia.
Yeah. This is the statement directly from the health minister. Over the last number of months, it has become clear that with the right safety protocols in place and standing orders that allow for the assembly to work quickly in an emergency situation, the power to modify legislation by ministerial order is unnecessary. So they're stripping themselves of the right to craft laws without having to go before the legislative assembly. So these extra legislative changes in law, they're taking the ability away from themselves to do those things, which is fantastic. Sorry, that was a long answer to your super chat, Lisa. I hope you got your money's worth.
Lisa got her money's worth with that one.
Yes. Viking Insane gives us $2. As a kid, I disliked Ezra's columns. Glad I grew up. Yeah, some kids start off as socialists, and then they grow up, pay taxes, and come to their senses. Observer Dude gives us £5. An Extinction Rebellion group have said David harassed and assaulted a woman in a tent during the winter. David, are you assaulting women in tents again?
No, I saw that rubbish. Basically, this was, what was her name? Ann Cognito, not her real name, of course, who was illegally occupying a patch of real estate that was turned into a filthy tent city beside the glorious war memorial in Ottawa. And we had a hunch, folks, that are there any people in these tents? So I went onto public, not private property, to a tent city that should have been shut down by the authorities months previously. And well, you can see the video. It was shot, I believe, in February, and it had a real Blair Witch Project vibe to it, with the snow that was coming down and the night vision we were using. And I knocked on her tent, and I had a conversation with Incognito that lasted all of, I guess, 15 seconds, because as soon as she heard my name, she said, "Goodbye." How is that harassment by any benchmark? I mean, the insinuation is that I guess, went onto her private property, went into her personal home. I caused any, I was intimidating. I was just there to ask her questions. One of the questions being, hey, what happened? Where are all the Extinction Rebellion protesters? Because all we're seeing is a bunch of empty tents here.
It's funny. It reminds me of the Occupy, I guess, Bay Street, Occupy
yes,
Toronto.
That's correct.
People.
Yes.
When you folks at Sun News went there at night, nobody was there. Nobody was there at all, because it's just performance art.
Yeah, that was, I would say, one of Ezra's finest moments at the Sun News Network, when we went with a thermal camera, Sheila, if you can imagine. We rented one, and we could tell the heat signature of whether or not these environmentalists were in their tents. And the vast majority of the tents, just like what you just saw there with Incognito, her taking up that real estate next to the War Memorial, were empty. So it's kind of like a Pontiac Fiero, if you will. It's all show and no go. You know what I'm saying? And you can see from the clip as well, Sheila. I've got my mic flash there. I identify who I am. I was with a female cameraman, if that makes any difference, for that particular caper. Again, Sheila, can you see any evidence of harassment? I think their definition of harassment is that I wanted to ask some impolite questions. Sorry, that does not meet the benchmark of harassment, especially when you are illegally occupying a public area.
Yeah, you have to remember, though, that this is the words are violence crowd. So if you're there saying words that they don't like, maybe misgendering them or whatever, you're just supposed to guess at what sort of kaleidoscope of sexual minority they're living in that day. That's violence to them. So for them to say words are violence, then if you said something they don't like or that hurt their feelings or even made them uncomfortable, for them that amounts to assault, because they've diminished the word violence so much.
Good point, Sheila. And it doesn't have to be a derogatory word, a profane word.
No.
I have found, and I wasn't doing this as a goof, but when I cover some of these leftist protests or the Women's March, for example, and even before I can get a question out, I'm getting the raised middle finger and the F-bomb. And I typically say, if it's a female, I go, "Oh my, that's not very ladylike." They explode. They go crazy. I thought a lady was a nice thing, Sheila. What happened, right?
Yeah, I'm happy when somebody calls me a lady, because I don't feel like much of one most days. It's a rare compliment. But for them, it's offensive. Like, lady, they'll go to a slut walk.
Correct.
And celebrate that word, but don't you dare call them a lady. That's an insult.
How is this world so upside down, Sheila? I will proudly proclaim myself as a slut, which I would never call a woman, but they lose their marbles when they are called a lady, right?
Yeah. It's what a time to be alive. Okay, let's keep going. Viking Insane gives us $2. Remember when Bell was broken up? It's time. I remember too, I think Safeway, maybe a couple decades ago, they ran into some trouble with being a monopoly in some towns. And so, it's been done. It's been done. But I think Standard Oil is probably the greatest example. If Standard Oil was just allowed to grow and grow and grow, there would only be one oil company in the Western world, I think. And
certainly in the U.S. in the 80s, AT&T. I believe that was broken up too. So, I mean, when a monopoly or an oligopoly, Sheila, abuses its authority, I think you're asking for trouble. You're getting the government's attention. And the added thing here, as opposed to AT&T or Standard Oil, there is an argument to be made, about the First Amendment, right? That freedom of speech is cherished and protected in the United States.
Yep.
So I think there is an angle there. I'll tell you one thing, I would love to see the hearings play out on this one, wouldn't you, Sheila?
Yeah, I'd love to see Mark Zuckerberg back there with his pillow under his chair and his little short little legs dangling from the big boy chair that he's sitting in. Can you imagine such a nerd running the world? And I know he's eavesdropping on me right now, Mark Zuckerberg. But you imagine, like, this is the guy who's controlling the flow of information? What have we done to ourselves here? Anyway, we should keep going. Kane and Mark gives us $2. Justin, producer Justin, does such a good job. Shout out. Justin, you know what to do. Yeah, there it was.
The electric.
Apparently, Justin had that in the queue for quite some time. He was ready and eager for his own shout out. So thank you, Kane. You made Justin's day. Mike Mayer gives us $10. Thank you for all your support, Rebels. That's Mike Mayer from People vs. Predators. Keep fighting the good fight. Together we can make a better world. You guys are definitely doing that by doing your best to keep alleged child predators behind bars, by having their bail revoked as they await trial, and doing your best to alert communities that predators are being released to them, the convicted kind. So you guys are out there doing the Lord's work, and you never seem to take a break. I see over the weekend, you guys are always doing something. I know you're normal people with real jobs, and Mike, you're a veteran. So you've already done your time for our country, and yet you're still working very hard to keep everybody else's kids safe. Thank you for that. And you can find them at peopleversuspredators.ca.
And just look at folks, Sheila using her journalist cap there. Allegedly.
Yeah. I don't want to get sued by a child. I have better things to do with my time. Mike Leskiller, I think is how I say your last name, Mike. Keep up the good work. We definitely will. Natalie gives us $10. I don't see a super chat. Thank you very much. My friend, Craig McDonald, guy with some pretty cute kids, and he helped me find some sunglasses. David, you'll appreciate this. Some sunglasses that are pretty close to a vintage pair that Ric Flair wore in a motivational Ric Flair keep on fighting. And I've looked my whole life for a similar pair. They're vintage Ray-Bans, and Craig just helped me find them. Very helpful.
Can you model them for us now, Sheila, or maybe next Tuesday?
Yeah, I can model them next Tuesday. I ordered them. They're not here yet.
Oh, okay.
But
that would get in the way of modeling them then.
Yeah, that'll. But Craig helped me solve a problem, and now he's paying $2.79 to talk to me, which hardly seems right. But thank you very much, Craig. Kudos on repealing Bill 10. Jason, now do Bill 24. Yes. Let's just, start ripping the tentacles of too much government out of everything. But it's nice to see that they recognize that Bill 10, even though they did not abuse it, could be abused by future governments. Wonderful foresight. And if only all of the conservative movement could recognize that they will not always be in power. Yeah. And the things we do now or that we allow to exist, they can be a real problem for free people down the road.
You know what?
Go ahead.
I might go out on a limb here, Sheila. After 4 years of the NDP, maybe the Conservatives will forever be in power in Alberta, or at least until we shed off our mortal coil. I can't see that hideous experiment being repeated a second time.
I have bad dreams about a division on the Conservative side one more time, because the separatist people, who are also by and large Conservative, I think when you're pro-sovereignty and the federal government getting out of life, that's the Conservative movement. And then there's Jason Kenney doing a pretty good job, all things considered, Conservative movement, but he's a Federalist. And I worry that there will be a crack if they don't handle the referendum question that people want properly, because I don't think it needs to be done through another party. I think it can just be done through a movement. If it's a political party, I worry about bleeding off support and the NDP just walking up the middle again.
I never thought about that wild card, and now you have put terror into my soul by mentioning it. And I'm going to put you on the spot, Sheila. If there was a referendum tomorrow, how are you voting?
Oh, I'm out. I'm out. There's a cloud of dust where I'm standing, like a cartoon. I'm out of here. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll get working on the new passports. Actually, I would like to be the passport stamper person in Lloydminster.
Geez. No, I'm sorry, Sheila, you're underqualified for that. You have to be miserable to be the passport stamper. With your smiling face and cheery attitude, you're not allowed to be the passport stamper.
I would also like to be the envoy to South Dakota. There's a lot of jobs in a free Alberta that I would like to give myself, and things that I would like to do. So yeah, I'm out of here. I'm over Confederation completely. I was sort of like, is it salvageable? No, this last year I'm like, nope, let's go. Ask me the question. Let's go.
There you go.
But
Sheila, the separatist gun read.
Yeah, completely. I'm out.
Okay.
I'm out. Okay, let's keep going. Natalie gives us $10. Today at the store, I was witness to police for a man who did not wear a mask for medical reasons, did not disclose, and the store refused services. You don't have to disclose.
No.
Why do you have to tell complete strangers what your medical conditions are so you can buy a jug of milk? But this is a crazy, crazy time. And this is why I'm so happy that Jason Kenney is repealing some of these authoritarian laws that are on the books, because it's absolutely humiliating for someone to have to disclose their private medical conditions to a complete stranger to justify why they are not going to wear a mask, which is ineffective anyway, just so that they can get some household necessities.
And Sheila, some companies are playing the card that our internal policy actually trumps the rule of law. And I'm sorry, it doesn't. And one of them is apparently Air Canada. Chris Sky, last Saturday, he was flying into, I believe it was Moncton, New Brunswick, to go to then drive to Nova Scotia. He was arrested and handcuffed for, quote, causing a disturbance. And what was his disturbance? He wasn't wearing a mask. But he has a medical exemption, and we have video of him showing the RCMP the letter from the doctor, which he doesn't have to do, as you rightly said earlier. And it didn't carry any weight whatsoever. He was frog marched off that plane in handcuffs. This is incredibly troubling to me, Sheila.
Yeah, and where is the directive from our politicians, especially in Ontario, where so much of this is happening? Why isn't Doug Ford coming out and saying, he's pretty quick, by the way, to call everybody a bunch of names, a bunch of yahoos, tell them to move out of the country because they disagree with him, because they're flying the flag upside down as a sign of distress.
Yeah. Which he thought was treason, by the way, which he's wrong.
Yeah. By the way, like they say, the right throws around the word treason directed at Justin Trudeau. I've never actually said it. But it's coming from Doug Ford, directed at Doug Ford voters, by the way. But why isn't he coming out and making it very clear? Because he has no problem expressing his feelings about Yahoo Nation and their protests against him. Why isn't he making it very clear to these businesses about what they can and can't do? Why isn't he saying in one of his press conferences, where he scolds everybody who just wants to be free and left alone, why isn't he scolding these businesses for their intrusive questions? Why isn't he making it very, very clear that they cannot do these things? And you know what else? Why aren't there consequences for these businesses who do these sorts of things? They seem to be getting away with it all over the place, even though it's a human rights violation. Why aren't there fines for businesses who are not following human rights rules? Because for me, I think rights are far more important than public health theater.
Yeah. And I think if Doug Ford were sitting here right now and had the opportunity to answer those questions that you just gave, Sheila, he would say, folks, can you just go back into the kitchen and bake a cherry cheesecake?
So gross.
He's all about that, right?
I know. Wearing his "We're all in this together" shirt. Sure. Then I'll see you at the cottage, Doug. We'll be in the boat together.
We're all in this together, which has now gone right to the #1 spot of the greatest lies ever told, which used to be the check is in the mail and hi, I'm from the government. I'm here to help you. Yeah, now it's we're all in this together. That's the numero uno lie for 2020, I would say, Sheila.
There are a few phrases from 2020 that I never want to hear again. We're all in this together is in there. Social distancing is in there. I just, there a lot of terrible things. Oh, flatten the curve. Flatten the curve is another one. We flattened it. Now what? That's another thing that I don't want to hear again. 2020 has given birth to a lot of terrible phrases that should have never made it into our lexicon.
Well, I got to take issue with you on two of those, Sheila. I was ahead of the curve, if you will, on two of those phrases, but they were a bit modified. Many years ago, I decided to flatten the curve, my belly, by getting on a bicycle. And when it comes to social distancing, I go right back to the 80s when I was on campus, except it was called socialist distancing. I got far away from those cats as I could go. So I was kind of ahead of the curve on those two, I think.
We're on month 7 of 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Let's keep going.
We're into the third trimester.
Yeah. There's going to be babies that were conceived and then born in a lockdown. That's how long this thing is going on, if it doesn't end soon. Bill Howie gives us $5. Why don't people promote Gab, BitChute, etc., which doesn't censor like Facebook and Twitter? I view rebel vids on BitChute. Free market can win by promoting competition. Here's the thing, though. What if Google removes your app from the App Store for Gab or BitChute, and then people can't find you, or you get a limited number of people who find you? I mean, Google controls the Google Play Store.
Yeah.
And, I think Android is the leading way around the world, maybe not in the Western world, but I mean, the developing world, everybody has an Android. Everybody uses the Google Play Store because they make cheaper entry-level phones. So China, India, they're all on Android. It's just how it is.
And the sad fact, too, Sheila, is that those platforms have but a percent of a percent of a percent of what, say, a Facebook has.
Yeah, they do. And Google controls Android Play Store, so they can just remove that from the platform. So if they don't want you to have access to that, they'll remove it from there. So, I mean, yes, I'm a free market conservative, but when 1 or 2 companies control so much of the market, it's not a free market anymore. No. There's no room for entry for anybody else, and the competition is dead.
Yep.
Dallas Bentian gives us $20. Have you heard of the 2021 Trudeau plan to remove all your debt if you take the vaccine and get the health pass if you don't not go to one of these new facilities till you comply? Any truth? Keep up the great work. No truth. Ezra talked about this yesterday. I think even they're going to clip that version of the live stream yesterday where Ezra addressed this directly. I must have received 60 emails in the last 24 hours, people forwarding me this. One of two things is happening here. But I think it's probably my first suspicion. I think somebody is doing their best to make conservatives look like hayseeds and rubes by passing around this information. They want us to report on it. They want you to share it so they can say, look at those people sharing fake news. They fell for a hoax. Ha, 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 ha. That's what I think. I think this is just somebody doing that. I mean, the language they use in that is, like I said to Drea, they say that this is a leak from the Prime Minister's office, but it's somebody saying that whoever is saying that doesn't realize that the Prime Minister's office is subject to access to information. And I ATIP the PMO all the time. It's how we found out about Gerald Butts's moving expenses. The information is there. The PMO is not an arm of the Liberal Party. it's a government entity, and we can file access to information into it. This is somebody just trying to make conservatives look bad, or less likely, someone who heard a rumor, published it on Facebook, and now the rumor is going around the world and they're saying, look at me, I'm getting the information out. But your action, Justin Trudeau is bad enough and sinister enough that we don't need to make things up about him. We just don't.
And you know, Sheila, I think a far more relevant fear coming from this federal government in 2021, maybe 2022, who knows, is the idea of a capital gains tax being brought in. In 8 months, this government has spent a decade's worth of budgets, and they've got to pay the piper somewhere. And once again, because this is the way we roll increasingly in Canada, you penalize the makers and you give to the takers. And that means if you are a homeowner, I think I'm not sure what the likelihood is in terms of a percentage, Sheila, but I could see this government bringing in a capital gains tax to pay for all the spending they've been doing. Because where else is the money going to come from?
Yeah. I mean, or increasing the GST, as a temporary measure that never goes away.
You mean like income tax?
Yeah,
Back
exactly.
in the First World War?
We're just going to pay for the war. It's fine.
Have we got any news on the Western Front yet?
Yeah. And I guess the thing is with these rumors, I mean, there's enough truth out there about Justin Trudeau doing bad things that, the truth is bad enough. We know that they're, looking for people to establish quarantine facilities within the provinces. That's bad enough. We don't need to add all the other fake stuff on it. And we don't have to, fact check it. When somebody says, I have an exclusive leak from the PMO, take that with a handful of salt, a cube of salt, those cube of salts that you put out for cattle, take it with one of those, because they don't have information that other MPs wouldn't have.
Yeah, don't do what happened back in the 90s, Sheila, when I was reading, it was a really great analysis of how O.J. Simpson, against all odds, got off. And there were 7 main reasons, but one of the reasons was the LAPD tried to frame a guilty man, right? Don't frame someone who's already guilty, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Let's keep going. In Darkness gives us $5. Vote David the Menzoid Menzies for the Greatest Canadian Award 2020. Wow. He's got my vote. He's got my vote. There's one.
I would vote against that because I want to see Don Cherry get a vote like that. Yes. I at least want to see him get the Order of Canada. And remember, folks, we're only a month away, really, aren't we, Sheila, from that another horrible prelude to what we have in the year 2020. Don Cherry himself, a great Canadian, the man responsible for the most watched 8 minutes of TV every week in Canada, being deplatformed because he allegedly said something insensitive. So, that would be, before you give me any accolades, let's make sure we honor Don Cherry as he deserves to be.
We should start a bit of a full court press campaign to have him honored with something. Maybe we could honor him ourselves. Maybe we could have like a Don Cherry award that we give out every year. That'd be kind of fun.
I'll tell you something, Sheila. I think I might still have his voicemail on my phone. When I delivered, he wasn't there to accept it, but I dropped it off. Remember, we did that enormous petition and we printed it out very beautifully, every single name. So, folks, any of you watching, if you signed our Save Don Cherry petition, your name went on that, and we delivered it to his house in Mississauga, and he was over the top thankful and humbled by that. He loved that. So that's the kind of guy he is.
We need a Don Cherry Cancel Culture Award. Cancel Culture Survivor Award that we give out to people every single year. We should have a banquet. Let's keep going. Sir Colo Group gives us $10. I don't see a super chat, but very generous. BC Prairie Girl. Huh? BC Prairie Girl, where are you? You're in the interior, maybe? An expat from Alberta gives us $6.99. David, do you keep in touch with Charles Adler? What the hell happened to him? Great question.
You know what? Charles Adler, Michael Korn, two of, the hosts at Sun News when I was at Sun News doing the morning show. And I was not only a colleague, I would consider myself friends. I haven't heard from either of them in years. They've, of course, as you know, Sheila, they've gone full-on liberal. They've made those declarations. Yeah. And in a way, you know what? I don't want to say anything bad about them because I try to put myself in a space where I remember the good times and the laughs we had and the laughs on air and the content on air, which I thought was fantastic. I look at both of them in a way, Sheila, and I don't know if I'm speaking for you. It's almost in a sense of wonderment that you could go 180 on all your beliefs, all your politics, everything that is important to you, for what I think is just the pursuit of the mighty buck. This all happened once Sun News Network went off the air, so there was no right-leaning TV, national TV network in Canada anymore. Chorus, where Charles works, it is the most woke radio. It is so bad, but yet not so bad it's good. It's just so bad, and the cardinal sin of all, it's so boring. But basically, they seem to operate by the proviso of, if you don't get woke, you're going to get broke. And I think that's the motivation here. And you know what, Sheila? As much as I want to be a provider for my family, if somebody came along and it was the polar opposite news network of what Rebel News is, it was ultra left, and said, we're going to double your salary, but this is what you have to spew, I don't think I could do it. I don't think I have it in me to be such a mercenary to switch sides like that for the almighty buck.
And that's a great way to put it, that they are mercenaries. If the change had been gradual, I would be inclined to think that maybe some of it was sincere, but it was like a switch got flipped. Yeah. Overnight for both of them. And that's why I don't think it was sincere. It was just they saw the writing on the wall and the money and decided that this is the way to be. And so it makes you wonder. I mean, they truly discredited themselves because either they're insincere now or they were insincere before. And, as someone who, if these were their politics, fine, at least you're honest about it. But I'm not sure if this is their politics or if those were their politics. But, for them, it's whatever pays the bills. And I just think it's such a shame because it is the definition of sellout. Yep. And I don't talk about them very much. I mean, I've got a special disdain in my heart for Michael Korn, who is taking money from Catholics and going on Catholic speaking tours and taking money from Catholics for the books he wrote about why Catholicism is right, while he was actively changing religions.
Yes. And there's an incredible column from the National Post years ago by Father Raymond D'Souza that basically outlines everything you just said. And it's shocking.
And the timeline and everything, Father Raymond lays it all bare. And so, for me, it's pretty clear it was the almighty buck. But I don't really like to talk about those two because they are so insignificant now in the Canadian media landscape that it would feel like I'm punching down. And I'm sure maybe I'd like to think that they struggle with their own conscience every day. And so they don't need to really struggle with me.
But, I used to joke with Michael, although he didn't see the humor in it. I said, your next book should be why Muslims are right, why Islam is correct. Because figure it, Sheila, if even 10% of the world's Muslims buy that book, he's a millionaire overnight in royalties. Yeah. And what a coup, right? Could you imagine for the Islamists out there? Here's a guy that had a best-selling book called Why the Catholics Are Right, and he's gone completely 180 and he's seen the way of Allah. I mean, it would be an enormous coup for them, and it would make Michael Korn very, very rich.
Give him time. He'll get there. Let's keep going.
We could call it Koran on the Quran. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, he'll get there. I mean, it's not going to be a surprise. That's just going to be, just follow the buck. Michael Hanna gives us $10 and alludes to something David and I have already spoken about, but he probably sent the super chat before we did. It's not actually Section 230. That's the problem regarding Twitter censorship. The problem is that Apple and Google have a monopoly on mobile app distribution via their app stores. Mm-hmm. That should be busted. Yes, that's true. Yep. David Anderson gives us $2. Bill 10. Every government bill must have a sunset clause. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
That they have to justify why they still require these powers. Viking Insane gives us $2. Doug Ford is a disappointment, conservative in name only. Yeah, we talked about this the other day, that while Justin Trudeau is terrible, I'm not particularly disappointed by him because I expected all of this. You knew what you were getting when Justin Trudeau was elected. Doug Ford promised everybody something completely different, and he's delivering more Dalton McGuinty, as it turns out. Noble Canadian, $5. Same in Windsor, Ontario, had my mask exemption card and store turned me away. Also asked to prove disability. You know, the mask exemption card isn't a permission card. And people can find out details about that at maskexemption.ca, or they can get one of those fantastic buttons that David has. It's just inviting the person that you're presenting it to educate themselves on why you're exempt. Because you are, if you say you are. And it refers them back to maskexemption.ca, or it lays out the rules. It says, help, I'm exempt, kind of thing. It's not a permission card, because you don't need permission to be exempt. You are exempt if you say you're exempt.
And you know, Sheila, we had a victory in this regard when it came to one particular retailer, Dollarama. Linda Brownlee. Boy, there was a Freudian slip. Very nice lady. Totally verbally harassed by a raging wild Karen in aisle 5 at a Scarborough Dollarama, and the security said to Linda, hurry up, make your purchases, get out of here. When they should have been doing that to the big mouth. We reached out to Dollarama Corporate in Montreal, and to Dollarama's credit, they said, we handled this incorrectly. We are retraining the employees at this store to respect medical exemptions. And that's it. So don't take this silently. If it's not a story that we're working on to get justice, there's nothing stopping you from writing a firm but polite letter to a head office outlining this situation and getting justice, because you are in the right. You've got the law on your side.
Yeah, a rare victory. Natalie continues and gives us $5 more. The store called the police, and I gave a statement in support of the person who had the exemption. I gave my account of this situation to police. Thank you for being a good citizen. A lot of people just wouldn't get involved. Pink Phoenix Nails gives us $1.49. Thank you very much, Pink Phoenix. And thanks for getting back to me about Haley the other day. Peter Bass gives us $2. Question for She-Devil. The name is sticking. Will we ever see an SGR archery video? Yeah, maybe. David, I think you've seen some pictures of me in the act of archery, or at least up in a tree stand with my face painted and full camo with my bow.
And your daughter too, I believe, right?
Yeah, my daughter too. Yeah. She's quite the little Katniss. My whole family's into archery. My husband and I spend some time up in the tree stand in the early morning hours watching moose walk by from too far away. It's fun. It's just you and the animal, and you're sort of, I like shooting, don't get me wrong. I like hunting, but archery feels a little bit more like man versus nature sometimes, because you really have to be quiet and patient. Travis Coulson gives us $3.99. Why is Facebook not censoring that false document? Why would they censor something that makes conservatives look like a bunch of rubes? Yeah. Why would they do that? Ryan Kraus gives us $5. I love what Rebel is doing. Keep up the great work. We have to fight this tyranny on every level. Yes. And I say this all the time. a lot of this tyranny is coming from your local politicians, your municipal politicians, your county, your city, your town. That's why, I don't know why Conservatives a long time ago just walked off the field of municipal politics and said, we're going to focus on provincial and federal. But as it turns out, the local authorities have a lot of authority to strip away your rights and freedoms. And they're doing it right now. We have this patchwork of mask bylaws and fines all across the country. And it's time Conservatives got involved there. Bedrock gives us $10. SGR, are you open to writing a new bestseller? Who are the media party? That's interesting. Destroyers meets new Sean Spicer book. Oh, I bet you we'd have to lawyer the daylights out of a book like that. Well, we got to lawyer everything, don't we? It's one of our largest expenses outside of salaries, actually, legal fees. So, yeah, I am definitely open to writing a new bestseller. I've been with the company 5 years and I have 3 bestsellers. So I'm like 2 years behind what I should be. David, you should be writing a bestseller too.
I am working on something. Right now I'm reading a bestseller. Does that count?
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Producer, it's a Superman comic.
Okay, we're 11:01 my time.
Oh, and I know you got to hit the road. And you know what? I can't believe where the time flew because I wanted to talk about Avi's recent video. We'd have no time for that. I want to thank Mr. Producer.
No. We got super chats still. But why don't wrap up the show quite yet? We got to burn through these super chats and refer everybody to Avi.
And you know, and I'll just give Mr. Producer the heads up. Once we finish the super chats, I know Ezra loves to finish the show with a dog video. We have a horse video. We won't comment on it. I'll leave the audience to make their own comments once they see this incredible horse video. But please, Sheila, finish those super chats.
Hint. The horses could possibly be homophobic. I'm not sure.
That's the hook.
Mark Lescaler gives us $5. I don't want to hear build back better ever again. Yes, that's another phrase that should be in the dustbin of history. Donald Schur gives us $10. I wear my Michelle Obama is a guy shirt everywhere. People love it. They just want the truth about things. I have my Hillary for prison shirt that I got in 2016, and I wear that everywhere too, and I get a lot of high fives over that one. Luke Viano, I hope I said that right. I don't know, but you were very generous. Gave us $50 and said it's for grapes. Very kind of you. Thank you. Wow. Danny Dahl gives us $5. Car accidents take the lives of 1.3 million people per year. I hope that's globally. We should have a vehicle ban and lockdown. Yeah, you know, when you look at these things in context versus the COVID deaths, COVID deaths seem sort of insignificant in the grand scheme.
And you know, Sheila, that's a good point. I mean, if Doug Ford is now, it's all about health, it's not about the economy, okay, then strip cigarettes from the shelves of all retailers right away, because we know if used as directed, this product is likely going to shorten or end your life. But there's some kind of an asterisk when it comes to selling cigarettes, I suppose. Yeah. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, because the government makes tax dollars off the vice taxes. So let's keep going. El Cap 22 gives us £5. Yaniv told the police David held him at gunpoint. Isn't that illegal to make such a false claim? Yeah, it's at the very least, filing a false report, maybe mischief. I mean, every time Jonathan Yaniv opens his mouth, a lie comes out.
And he skated on that one too, and actually embellished the lie that the only reason I wasn't arrested for having a prohibitive handgun, Sheila, is because I threw it down a sewer grate. Well, folks, go to the Pantages Hotel. Not only did the gun not exist, there's no sewer grate there either. It's a lie on top of a lie. Okay.
Patriot Girl 1 American gives us $9.99, I think, in Canadian pesos. God bless you, Canadian patriots. We'll get through this together. God wins. God bless. From California. Yeah, you have Governor Gavin Gruesome there, don't you? He's really something else, just a real authoritarian. Let's hope the people from California who are moving to Texas leave their politics behind.
Yeah. And if
Lisa
you don't, wear your mask in between bites of your lunch, right?
Yeah, in between bites of your lunch. Lisa Proust gives us $2. David and Sheila, keep up the amazing work. We definitely will. And thank you, Lisa, for all of your support. And it is 5 minutes past, and we talked about like one or two of the things that we planned to. But everybody was so generous with their super chats, so I'd rather talk about the things that people want us to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for the super chatters. And as I alluded to earlier, Ezra loves dog videos to end the show. We're going to play a horse video. And as Sheila alluded to, does this video indicate evidence that horses can see colors, or are horses homophobic? Check it out.
Mounted police force. Oh, I don't like the colour. Don't like the colour. Oh, brilliant, brilliant.